You will suffer.
Hey, what's up everyone? It's Eric here with EJE TV, and today I wanted to show you guys a really cool and fun build that I've been using in No Rest for the Wicked. I just recently finished the story and I've gotten into endgame, so we're doing like pestilence outbreaks and crucible and stuff. But this build has pretty much carried me all the way throughout the story, and I'm level 29 now. But we're basically using two weapons, which is a one-handed spear, as well as the unique lacquered bow, however you want to pronounce it. But they kind of synergize off of one another. And so we'll talk about the two weapons first, and then we'll kind of go into the gear that I have. Now, just a quick little disclaimer, this isn't like min-maxed completely out yet the way that I would like it to be. But like I said, it's pretty much carried me throughout the whole story campaign, and it's doing pretty well in endgame now. So the first weapon I have that I use is the gnarled harpoon. Basically, I put the cold damage infusion gem into it. That way I could proc to freeze the enemies. And then the enchantments are decent. Like I said, it might not be min-maxed completely the way that I want, but it's kind of the best of what I've been using. I always put the heal aura rune on my main weapon for another source of heal. And then I've got Frost Dash on there, but to be honest, I don't use too many rune attacks on my spear, which I feel like maybe I should use a little more. Yeah, the main things are the one-handed spear with cold damage infusion on it. Now you could either put the gem into that slot, or you can try to roll it with the cold damage infusion in it, but I just chose to do it like this. The damage increased by 5% for each nearby enemy is pretty good, and the other two are pretty good. I like to keep my stamina recovery up as much as I can because I'm a very stamina heavy type of player. My playstyle is ranged gameplay, so I like to build into like archer builds a lot of the times in different games. That's kind of why I've chose to build it out this way. But the other weapon, which is the bow, in my offhand slot, it has fire arrow and ice arrow. Now, the enchantments down below, the first one that I primarily use is the fire arrow because it says heat damage increased by 13% for 6 seconds after cold damage dealt. So basically, I use my harpoon with cold damage infusion to proc the cold damage and do my main source of damage. And then once I build up focus and I dodge roll out of the way, if like I'm about to get attacked or something, I can step from a distance and fire off my fire arrows. And I also have the heat damage infusion gem in this bow as well, so my regular arrow proc will have the heat damage as well. And so I think it works pretty well. As well as cold damage is also increased by 13% for 6 seconds after heat damage is dealt, so I can kind of shoot the fire and ice arrow back and forth. But I primarily use the heat arrows, or the fire arrows, for heat damage after I've mainly attacked with my spear here. And then the gain 26% stamina on damage dodged is also another pretty good benefit for this as well. And we'll go into the armor a little bit here. But like I said, these pieces are not completely min-maxed the way I want. I would probably say the helmet and the body armor are kind of where I'm ending on, but I still need to get me better plague pants and gloves. So I'm working on those. I'm starting to farm in game, like I said, to get more fallen embers so I can roll the enchantments that I want. But on my helmet or on any plague item, I always try to run indestructible as well as unrepairable. It's kind of an OP duo there. It's pretty self-explanatory, but you basically have an infinite armor piece. And then the main one that I have on this is the cold damage is increased by 20%. So every time I'm attacking with my spear with cold damage, I get a cold damage buff. And then the other two enchantments are just kind of quality of life things that I have for it right now. So damage taken decreased by 10% at low focus. Because I always try to use as much focus as I can. Either using rune attacks on my spear or mainly the bow fire arrows, and so I get a little bit of damage taken decreased there. And then healing increased by up to 16% based on durability. Those are just some nice to haves. I'm not too sure how I want to min-max this out completely to maximize the build, but it's kind of where I'm at, like I said. And then the body armor I have, I put a healing gem in it, which I actually got a max roll, which is nice. So healing increased by 15%. And then damage increased by 30% for 6 seconds after staggering an enemy, which is really nice. That's a huge damage buff. And then I also have damage taken decreased by 22% at low health. And then hunger limit increased by 1. I would say these two are just basically like quality of life, survivability enchantments. And I do get each one does have a damage buff as well, so those are nice. And then the pants are okay. I have a max stamina gem in it. And these, yeah, like I said, these aren't the best, but it is kind of what I have at the moment. And same with the gloves. The gloves are pretty decent. I do have frost buildup, chipped sapphire, so I could get basically proc to be able to freeze enemies a lot faster. Because the faster I can freeze enemies, the better survivability I have and the amount of damage I can put down while they're just frozen sitting there doing nothing. But these gloves were a pretty decent roll. I do have some other plagued gloves that I'm gonna switch into, but let me go ahead and go get those real quick so I can show you how I'm gonna build. Alright, so these Gloam King gauntlets I have here on the left hand side are the ones that I'm gonna build into because they have unrepairable already. And then I'm going to roll to be able to get indestructible on this as well. But the main thing I'm looking at on here that's a huge plus for me is I get frost buildup is increased by 27%. So once I switch into these, I'll be able to free up a gem slot to be able to use something else there instead of having the frost buildup increased by 12% on the current gloves that I'm using. So that'll be a huge increase. I just prefer having a higher frost buildup, just because it allows me to freeze the enemies a lot faster with my cold damage. So that's a really nice quality of life enchantment for me. But I just need to farm a bunch more embers so that way I can re-roll these, and then I'm going to swap to this gauntlet here. So that's something that you can look out for. Other than that, the rings I use are kind of, really up to you. Armor increased by 15%. Gain 2% stamina on damage dealt, which this one actually feels pretty good. I wish I had a little bit higher of a percentage, but it you can definitely feel it work. And then I have the silver ring, which is deal 24% increased damage on parry, which I don't really parry too much on this build. I'm not particularly like a big parry type of playstyle, but when I can, I try to parry, and so that's just a nice little enchantment there. But the main two things I wanted to talk about were the one-handed spear with cold damage infusion, and then comboing that with the unique bow here to be able to get an increase in heat damage after cold damage is dealt. So yeah, that's pretty much the build. I'll show you my stats. You basically want to spec into strength and dexterity for the bonuses. The spear is strength and dexterity based, and then the bow is obviously dexterity based. So this is kind of where I'm sitting at right now, which feels pretty good. But yeah, let's go ahead and cut to some gameplay. But I hope you enjoy the build so far.